Hello students, I'm sure you are all doing well, and today the lesson that we are going to study is the last lesson. It is quite an interesting story written by a French writer, and the name of the writer is Alphonse Daudet, and he is here right in front of you. I'm sure you can see him. Quite an interesting story he has written, and the last lesson basically talks about patriotism in true sense. What is patriotism? Why a person should love the country, and apart from that, he has also shown over here the significance, the importance of the mother tongue, and why it is important to learn that language. So over here, through a particular incident, we are going to study that. But before that, I would like to give you a little bit of background of the story. The last lesson is set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War 1870 to 1871. Now, this particular war, if you will Google it or if you will try to search about it, you will definitely know more about this particular war. But it was between France and it was between Prussia. Now, this war, it caused a lot of damage. Obviously, any type of war causes a lot of damage, and there's nobody who wins the war, but the one who loses the war is humanity. So as humans, we should try to understand each other. We should try to show love towards the other people. But sadly, we are not able to do that, and then we end up in wars. There are a lot of wars going on across the world, somewhere here, somewhere there, and that causes a lot of problem in a lot of families as well, in which France was defeated by Prussia led by Bismarck. Now over here, this particular war was lost by France, and because of that, certain decisions were taken that were against French people, that were against France, and because of that, the people had to suffer. Now how they are suffering, we will see in this story. Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. Now, after this war, in this Prussia, it is written that it consisted, which is right now called Germany, Poland, and Austria. They were all combined. In this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. And because of this war, because French people were not able to protect their land, their two areas, that is Alsace and Lorraine, they went to the enemies, and because of that, certain rules and regulations were passed, certain policies were created which were not appropriate for the French people, and that is the crux of this entire story. This is what we are going to learn. So let us try to study this story, to understand this story, and we will see what kind of points are provided over here. It is in first person narration. The person, the narrator, the writer, he is telling something over here. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of a scolding. The person over here, you can see a boy is going to a school, and he is right now a little bit of scared because he is going to a class and he is late. Because he is late, obviously his teacher is going to scold him, so he is apprehensive. He is thinking about that. Plus, apart from that, he also has not done the homework that will come later in the story. Especially because Mr. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles. You are all aware that in languages we have a concept called participles. Like prepositions, like conjunctions, we have participles also. So this Mr. Hamel, he was going to ask students about participles, and this boy who is going to the school a little late today, he has not learned that. And I did not know the first word about them, which means over here that he was not knowing about it, he did not learn it properly, and that's why he was scared. He knew that Mr. Hamel, his teacher, is definitely going to scold him. For a moment, I thought of running away, and being student, he thought that I should run away from here so that I don't have to face Mr. Hamel, because obviously he was a strict teacher and he wanted his students to do good. And spending the day out of doors. He wanted to run away and be somewhere else, not in the classrooms, not between the four walls, not among other students. It was so warm, so bright. Obviously, the day was quite pleasant and he wanted to stay outside. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods. Woods over here means forest. So in the forest, the birds were chirping, the cloud were there, and the day was quite bright and pleasant. And in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. And over here, the backdrop is of war. So everywhere you will find certain mention of war. And these soldiers were drilling over there. They were practicing something. And he could see that, he could observe that, he could sense that. So he did not want to go to the school, did not want to attend class, but he wanted to stay outside. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles, but I had the strength to resist. Ultimately, he did not skip his school. He goes to the school, he attends class. So he was able to resist the temptation of going out and being in midst of nature. And hurried off to school, and then he runs away to school. He goes to the school so that he can attend the class. He wanted to study. Somewhere in his heart, he also was a student. He wanted to study that. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. Bulletin board means notice board. There were students like this who were gathered over there and they were reading something. They were trying to understand what instructions are written. You normally must have seen that whenever there is an instruction, whenever there is something that is to be, told to the students, then obviously it is kept on the bulletin board. It is always kept on the notice board as a notice, and the students were reading something. But sometimes, or most of the times, what we read on notice board is not quite pleasant, because there are some instructions, there are some rules, regulations, and certain other things are there. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. In school, all the bad news means all the negative news were there on the bulletin board, and for 2 years they had experienced that. So he also thought that this time also it must be something like that only, and I do not want to read that. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer, all these instructions were there on the notice board. For 2 years, they kept on coming and they were reading continuously all these things. So they were habituated to these things. They knew that if something is there on notice board, it must be some bad news, because there is a war going on and there will be some instructions or orders from the authorities. And I thought to myself, without stopping, what can be the matter now? And then he was wondering in his heart, in his mind, he was thinking that what should be the matter now, because there are certain news which are coming and they were all hearing those things. Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice, there was a blacksmith watcher and he was with his apprentice, means he was with his assistant, reading the bulletin, called after me, and that person shouted and told him something. What is that? Let's understand. Don't go so fast, Bob. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. So this man told him, who was standing with his assistant, that you will go to your class in plenty of time. There is a lot of time left. You don't have to hurry towards that. And he addresses him as Bob. Bob means a general boy. So he addresses this student, our narrator, as Bob, and he says that you don't have to go so fast. You will reach there. Don't worry. I thought he was making fun of me, and I reached Mr. Hamill's little garden all out of breath, and now he was panting. He was hurrying over there, and when he reached to this Hamill's class, Mr. Hamill's class, at that time he was almost out of breath. He was panting, and finally he is there in his class, and Mr. Hamill is sitting over there. The students are there, and he then enters from the back and he observes the class. Whenever you are also late and reach there, normally you observe the class, what is going on and how the people are sitting and what the teacher is telling the students. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle. Whenever you enter in a school or a class, you always see that there are students running here and there is a lot of noise coming over there. So bustle means a lot of noise is there, which could be heard out in the street. So the children are making so much noise that even outsiders can listen to that. The opening and closing of desks. So what type of noise you hear? The desks are constantly being opened and closed. Lessons repeated in unison. All people are chanting certain things, or they are singing a rhyme or song or something like that. Very loud with our hands over our ears to understand better. And to understand better, they are keeping like this their hands, and they are listening to the teacher properly, and they are all in unison. They are all speaking, singing. And the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table, and the teacher is always with a ruler, because if there is a child who is doing mischief or who is not behaving well, then the teacher will definitely scold that person, or might use the ruler to just beat that person so that he will properly behave. But now it was all so still. But suddenly what he realized is that the class is completely quiet. There is pin drop silence. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen, and he was thinking on his way when he was coming to the class that I will enter the class from the back, and because people are making a lot of noise generally, he would just sit there and nobody would notice. But this time it did not happen, because the entire class was completely quiet. But of course, that day, everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. And over here, everybody was quiet, and it appeared as if it's Sunday morning in the school and there is not a soul to be seen. There is not a person who is making any noise. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places. All the children were in their places. They were all ready to study. And Mr. Hamel, walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm, and the teacher was all set to take his class. All the children were ready to study, and now he just stays there, he sits there, and he takes his place. I had to open the door and go in before everybody, and then he was noticed by all of them. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. He was dead scared of the teacher, because now he realized that everybody is watching me. I am late in the class, plus he has not done the homework. He has not learned the participles. But nothing happened. Strangely, the teacher did not tell him anything. The students did not take a lot of notice of that person, and he just enters. Mr. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." His name is now revealed over here, and the person who enters the class, that child who was going to the class, his name is Franz. And when he enters, the teacher is not at all angry, and he says that you are welcome to the class, just sit over there. And in your absence, we were about to start the class, but now you are here. Just start studying and let's begin the class. Let us commence with that. So this is what the teacher says. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. So the student, what is it doing? He just takes his place, he sits over there, and then he also joins the entire class along with the other students over there. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and little black silk cap. Over here, a little bit of description is given of teacher also, Mr. Hamel, how he was dressed that day, and he was dressed to the occasion. He was quite nicely dressed at that time, because something was special. And what was that special thing? Why was he dressed up? Let's find out. All embroidered, and that he never wore except on inspection and prize day. This particular kind of clothes were worn by Mr. Hamel only on inspection days, when others are coming, the authorities are coming from outside and they are checking something. Or he used to wear it on prize days when there was a tournament or any kind of function. But today was a different day. Why is he wearing this today? There's no function, there's nothing. What is the matter? Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Means it was looking quite quiet. There was nobody who was making any noise. There was no commotion. And that's what he observed. So he was a little surprised that time. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty. What he notices is that on the back benches normally there is nobody. They are all quiet and they are empty. But today there is something special. The village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Over there the villagers were sitting. Old Hauser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other besides. There were a lot of other people, elders who were sitting over there, those who already finished their school long back. In the past, they also were sitting over there and they also had joined the class. What was the matter? Why they were sitting in the class and why the class was so much crowded? Why they were all quiet? Let's find out. Everybody looked sad. They were not happy on that day. They were quite solemn. They were sitting without making any noise. And Hauser had brought old primer. Old primer means he brought his own textbook, which he used to study in his school days. Something like that. He brought that book to study in the class. Thumbed at the edges and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. So old Hauser was sitting with his primer, with his textbook, and it was quite worn out. It was not in a good condition, but still he was studying and he was trying to read that. He was trying to find out the details from his old textbook. Why? What is the reason why everybody is there and studying? While I was wondering about it all, Mr. Hamel mounted his chair. Now the teacher gets up and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you." And the teacher over here says that today, why this day is special, why everybody is there? Because Mr. Hamel is going to take his last lecture today. Not because he is leaving the job, but the reason is different. We will find that out by the time we reach to the end of the story. But over here, the teacher is taking his last lesson. He announces that, and then he begins the class in a very grave, in a very serious tone, because even teacher is not happy to take his last lesson because he wanted to teach, he wanted to contribute. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. Why is he taking his last lesson today? Because the orders have come from Germany and they are saying that the students are only going to learn German. They are not going to learn French now. Now, obviously, it's a huge blow on the schools, because in schools there should be democracy and there should be all the languages which should be taught. Most of the things, most of the languages are like that. Mother tongue especially has to be taught. But over here the order says that the children of France, they have to study German now. And if you don't study your own language, your own mother tongue, and if you don't understand that, then obviously your mother tongue, your culture is also going to be in danger. The new master comes tomorrow and Mr. Hamel is going to be replaced by another teacher who will teach them German and not French. French is going to be eliminated. It is going to be removed from the syllabus, from the class, and nobody is going to teach French to the children. And that is going to create a generation that has no idea, no mastery over French. That's obviously going to be quite fatal for the entire culture of France. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive, and because this is the last lesson, I want each one of you to pay extreme level of attention, and you must study it with all your heart, soul, sweat and blood, because after this it is quite possible that you will never learn French in the classrooms. What a thunderclap these words were to me. And obviously the narrator, Franz, he was affected by that statement. He was dead scared now and he is not happy at all. He is disappointed. Oh, the wretches, that was what they had put up at the town hall. Why the people were gathered near the billboard, near the bulletin board, near the notice board to read this instruction? This was the order. My last French lesson, why I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn anymore. And now Franz is not happy, and now he is realizing that he has not learned French enough. If he will not learn now, then how will he understand the mother tongue? And this is what is scaring him. This is what is creating problem. And now he realized that he has not paid good attention to that. I must stop there and then. And now he regrets all the things that he did in the past and ignored the French lessons. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar. Saar is the name of a river. And he used to enjoy in the river like this. In the past, he did not pay attention to his French lessons. He did not do his homework. And because of that, now he is a little concerned. Now he realizes that he has got no mastery over French language. And now onwards, after this day, French is not going to be taught to him. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints, were old friends now that I could not give up. And now he realizes that the textbooks that he dreaded earlier, that he disliked earlier, now he wanted to study them, because now he realizes that nobody is there going to teach him. Nobody will teach him now onwards, and French is going to be an alien language for him. Now he has to learn German from tomorrow onwards. And Mr. Hamel too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. And now he appreciates his teacher more, a little more than earlier. And now he realizes that whatever his teacher was doing, it was for the good of the students. Why he was keeping that ruler, now the logic also comes to his mind, and he realizes that Mr. Hamel is, after all, not that bad a teacher. He wanted actually his students to learn French, and that is why he was doing all these things. He was giving homework and he was keeping rulers so that people will get a little scared of him and they'll study a little more. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. And now he also realizes why Mr. Hamel is wearing his finest clothes. And now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. And he also now realizes why the old people have come over there, because they want to experience the school life. They want to experience how French sounds from the master, and they also wanted to learn a little more so that maybe they can pass on a little bit to their children also. And this is how everybody, I'm sure you can imagine and you can realize and understand that all the people over there, they are right now thinking about French, their mother tongue and their motherland, which is not going to be same from next day onwards. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school more. Even they were not very literate people. They also had a little difficulty in French because they did not study it properly, and that's why they are all gathered over there at least to attend that last lecture, and whatever Mr. Hamel is saying, they wanted to grasp each and every sense of that. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Now they will be deprived of their language and land both. They will not have any authority over that from next day onwards, and that is why all the villagers, they were gathered over there to thank the teacher as well, because he had given his precious 40 years, the most important prime 40 years of his life, to the study of all these things, to teach the children of this land. And that is why they wanted to show their thankfulness to the teacher as well. Now, while I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called, and suddenly the teacher is calling him. Franz. It was my turn to recite, and now it is his turn. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake. And over here Franz thinks in his mind that on that particular day, at that particular moment, he wanted to give anything to recite that the about participles without any mistake, and he wanted to make it perfectly all right so that he can at least present his best performance on that day and he can say that he has learned something important. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there, and then he made a mistake. Holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. Now he was so embarrassed by his performance that he did not want to speak anything. He was just keeping his head down and he was waiting. What will Mr. Hamill say? I heard Mr. Hamill say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. And now Mr. Franz says that you should feel bad about it because you have not studied that. And now onwards, maybe from next day onwards, you are not going to study it at all because I won't be there in the school. Some other teacher is going to replace me. And French itself is going out of syllabus. German textbooks are going to come and German teacher will only teach German. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time, I'll learn it tomorrow. Normally it's human tendency. We always postpone things without realizing that someday at certain point of time things are going to be taken away from us. And that's why we should love people around us as well, because it is quite possible that on one day they may not be there around us. We must learn our language. We must do everything that is in our capacity, because at a certain point things may not appear the same. They are not going to stay the same. And now you see where we have come out. That's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. And what is the problem of this city, of this village, of this area, Alsace? That they always say that they will study on a later day, on another day. They'll study it tomorrow. We always say that there is always a tomorrow, but sometimes tomorrow is not the same as today. So we should do everything in our capacity on this particular day itself. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it? You pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language, and now you are going to listen the taunts from other people. People are going to criticize you because you have not studied your mother tongue. They are going to speak like this. They are going to comment like this, that you have not studied your mother tongue. How will you study anything else? Because if you are not able to get mastery over your own language, then other languages are definitely going to be out of your league. But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. And you are not the one who is the worst person because you have not studied your participles. That is okay. But there is even more worse than this. There is even worse situation than this. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. We have all made mistakes. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. It is the fault of your parents also, because even they did not tell you in time that you should study French. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills, and they wanted some other work from you, and that's why you were not studying. So as to have a little more money. They wanted a little more money. They wanted something more financially, and that's why they did not invest in you in an educational manner. And that's why it is not the only person, you are not the only person who is to be blamed. Your parents are to be blamed, the society is to be blamed, and Mr. Hamill says that even I am to be blamed because I have also committed some mistakes. And what are they? Let's see. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And even I have sent you outside to water my plants like this so that you miss your classes. And because of that, you are not able to learn properly. So I am also to be blamed because of all these things. And this is where he is committing his own mistake as well. He is agreeing to that. And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? And when he wanted to go for fishing, he gave a holiday to all the students and they all went home happy that they don't have to study on that particular day, but they did not realize that it is going to cost them, and what a cost to be paid. They are now going to pay the cost of their mother tongue. The ignorance of that is going to be quite heavy. Then from one thing to another, Mr. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, and he continuously talked about French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, and he is not able to speak after that. Like merci. I'm sure some of you might be aware that merci means that thank you very much. So this is how French language sounds when you are saying merci beaucoup, which means that thank you so much for that. So this is how you use French, and it is the most beautiful language. It sounds very good. It is the most romantic language. That we must guard it among us and never forget it. We should protect our language like lock and key. Because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. When you know your language, you know that somewhere at some point of time you will be free because you know the mother tongue. You know how to express your ideas, your emotions, your sentiments through the words which are your own words, which are your own language, from your language, and that is what matters the most. You must learn it in that manner. You should be able to express your ideas in your own language. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lessons, and then he started reading the lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it, and on that day Franz was paying utmost attention and he was studying everything in the most precise manner. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. He wanted to learn now French, and the time is going and he is paying more and more attention, and he realizes that it is an easy language. He should study more and he should understand it more. But how long will he be able to study that now? I think too that I had never listened so carefully. He was also paying most attention, and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. Even Mr. Hamel was putting his soul out to teach those people. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads one stroke. So he wanted to teach everything that is there in French so that the children will continue this and they will understand each and every aspect of this language. So here he is trying his best. Even learners are trying their best to do justice to whatever is being taught on that particular day. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, Mr. Hamel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand. France, Alsace, France, Alsace. So here, he is also trying to teach in such a way. He has given now a writing task so the student would write that. He first gave the dictation, and this is how he is covering all the aspects of the language so that those who are sitting on that particular day, they can study something. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks, and everything was hung from one end to the other so that students can study that properly and they can read that. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. And it was completely quiet and there was nobody else. They were all sitting over there, they were not making any noise, and they were studying continuously so that they can understand what exactly is there in this language and what they have to master. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. What was the only sound that was coming? They were writing on the paper, and that scratching sound, it was coming. Once, some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them. There was nothing that could distract them today. Even beetles came, they did not pay attention. They were completely focused in their copybook, notebook. Not even the littlest ones who worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too, and each child was paying utmost attention. They were putting in all their efforts, and they were writing with so much precision that everything appeared very, very important to them today. On the roof of the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Now, this is a very interesting question. The child, being a child, he thinks that will the German people, the army people, force these pigeons also to coo in German? That's not possible, because animals have their own language and they speak everywhere the similar language. Even if you are in a different country, the pigeons, the animals are going to speak in the same manner. It is we who have created different languages for different countries, and that is what separates us. So sometimes language also plays a role to separate people from one to another. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Mr. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. He wanted to remember that day. He wanted to remember each and every part of that classroom, and that is why he was looking from one thing to the other, and he was noticing each and every part, and that's how he was sitting. He was observing every person, every nook and corner of that area. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place. And now he wonders, our narrator, Franz, the boy, a child, he thinks that this person has been here for 40 years, and that's a huge time, that's a long time. With his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that, he has been in this situation for 40 years, and he has observed the same scenario day in and day out, continuously, every single day, and still he is not tired. He wants to give his best to the class. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth, the walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hopvine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. So the hopvine also has reached to the highest area, and the walnut tree also is mentioned over here, and whatever he planted, everything has grown now. The benches have remained same. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man. To hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, and he was listening to the sounds where his sister was packing, because they had to leave. For they must leave the country next day, and they are all leaving because now the country is not their own. They have to leave this country and they have to stay somewhere else, so that they can be out of this war zone. So everybody is disturbed. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and he was constantly teaching. And then the babies chanted their ba, be, bi, bo, boo. So all the alphabets that were essential for learning French, the sounds, the phonics. So this is what the teacher is doing. Every single bit of knowledge is giving, spoken, written, everything, so that the children will remember this. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles. A person like him, he wore his spectacles and started reading. He was crying, he was reading, he was full of emotions, and he was so sad on that day. holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them, and then he started spelling them so that he will also remember whatever is being written in the textbook. He wanted to grasp every single word there. You could see that he too was crying, his voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. And how well I remember it, that last lesson. And then this boy says that even this old hosser who was speaking all these things, he was full of emotion, he was choking, and because of that he was not able to speak properly, but the emotions were spread all around the class, and the children, they wanted to laugh at it because it was sounding funny, but they did not laugh. They felt like crying also. So there were mixed emotions, and the narrator Franz says that he is not going to forget this last lesson ever, because it was quite an emotional journey for them. All at once the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus, at the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussian returning from drill sounded under our windows, and suddenly they heard that some Prussian soldiers, they were now coming, they were marching from the window over there, and they heard those people. They also heard the clock struck 12, and now it was the time to change entire thing. The city is changing, the country is changing, the mother tongue is also going to be wiped away, and some new teacher is coming. Mr. Hamel stood up very pale in his chair. The color of his face has turned pale. Now there is no brightness on his face. I never saw him look so tall. And today he was appearing quite taller. Why? Because today he has given his best lesson. Children have studied their best, and everybody was trying to be the best in their class so that they can remember that. My friends, said he. He could not speak. He was choking. But something choked him. He could not go on, and suddenly he fails in speaking. He was not able to utter a single word, and he could not finish his statement because today was his last day. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could in a loud handwriting. He is writing something on the board, and that is, what is that? Vive la France. Vive la France means Vive la France. In French language, it is pronounced like this, Vive la France, which means that long live France, means the country of France, culture of France should live for a longer period of time, and it should not die, because they loved their country, they loved their mother tongue, they loved the people and the traditions which were there in France. So this is what he writes on the board for everybody to read. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word he made a gesture to us with his hand. Now he is not able to speak, so what is he doing? He is just gesturing. He is just showing his hands movement, and he is telling people, what is he saying? Now go away, it's over, it's all over. School is dismissed, you may go. And the teacher over here, Mr. Hamel, with great sadness, with a lot of regret, he says that the school is over. Today the class is over now, and we are not going to study French. From the next day onwards, you all can go. And with a heavy heart, he bids goodbye to all of them, and this is where the chapter ends. Thank you very much, students, for listening. I'm sure you have understood each and everything. Keep learning, keep growing, and do well in your exams.